Hi, everybody. I am back. I'm sorry I had a bit of a hiatus here on any new videos for a while. However, there are going to be some upcoming videos that are going to explain kind of what's been going on. And there's been a lot going on in the last couple of weeks. So look forward to seeing those. One ended up being somewhat of an extension of a video I had been making, and it kind of popped back up into my life. And so I put that video on hold to see how the expanded version was going to work out. And it's unbelievable. So I'm really glad that I didn't release that video until this happened. Everything happens at the right time, I'm telling you. So that was perfect. Something else happened with me trying to help somebody, and I'm going to go into an extensive video on the disaster that came of that. But like I've said from the very beginning, you can't explain necessarily everything that happens in life and why, but it can be quite entertaining at times. So hopefully it entertains you as much as it ended up entertaining me, even though it could be considered kind of tragic, but well, not really tragic, but disappointing on several levels. But I still find silver linings in everything. So that's hopefully where the video will, help. But one of the things that I was really drawn to was a memory that I had right before my second marriage ended, and before I had to leave and go live in a domestic abuse shelter um, in the middle of the night. When that happened about a week prior, there was a night where I felt extremely uncomfortable. I had this uneasy feeling somebody might be in our home. I can't explain it. It's one of those intuitive things. And I remember not being able to go to sleep that night. I was completely exhausted, but something inside of me just would not let me go to sleep. And I'm laying there and I tossed and I turned, and my husband was laying by my side at the time. And just like that, a question popped in my head. And I always call it intuitive, because I didn't know why all of a sudden I felt this way. Well, I knew some of the things that had transpired in the house, but I always felt safe at night. Like nothing would happen while he was laying beside me, because if something did happen, he would have to explain it because he was there. So I always felt there was a sense of security with that. But that particular night, I felt no security at all. I felt very uncomfortable. Started wondering, is he going to do it himself? And what I'm referring to is, if you haven't seen the Escaping Justice attempted murder, that's, where he was working with others to plot and get rid of me for life insurance money. I mean, he had hundreds of thousands of dollars to gain off of my death. And I know he was trying to make it seem as natural as possible, so there'd be no questions asked, but they were also getting to the point where they were desperate, and, other people were getting involved. And, that's when I was kind of alerted to everything. But anyway, back to the matter at hand. I sat up, straight up in bed, and I tapped him, and he woke up. And well, he wasn't really sleeping. We hadn't been laying there that long. And I asked him, I said, if something happened during the night, would you protect me? And he just looked at me, with his questioning eyes. And I said, would you protect me? I said, like, if somebody broke into the home and tried to hurt me, would you try to stop them? And he just looks at me again and he goes, go to sleep. No, I would protect the home, you, anything. Just go to sleep. It's not that abnormal to ask somebody if somebody broke into your home. People break into people's houses every day. I mean, probably, every single day there's many break-ins, and especially late at night. And then people get killed and hurt and what have you. And I knew with his drug friends, I had no idea. They knew what was in our home, what they would do, even just for the safety of our home. But for him to just tell me to go to sleep, was like, he knew he couldn't answer that question with, yes, I would protect you or whatever, because he would have been the one who let them in the home to hurt me, most likely. So Yeah, he didn't like to lie. I will give him that. But he also didn't like to tell the truth. So he would do things like that where he would derail the conversation and be like, just go to sleep. Like, I'm not going to even answer that question. Like it was something foolish. And, but I knew the answer. And needless to say, I did not sleep that entire night. I could handle the night and go to work the next day and be just fine. I would rather stay awake. Something in me just said it is not time to sleep tonight. You need to be on alert. And he was pretty mad in the morning. Um, in which I don't know why he'd be mad that I didn't sleep. There was no reason for him to be upset. Most husbands would probably be very concerned about, why were you up all night? Why couldn't you sleep? Nope, he was mad. I didn't get any sleep. I think he was mad I was still alive. But um, even without me, I wasn't a Christian at the time, and I had never read the Bible. Um, I always said God was protecting me the entire time, constantly telling me and giving me the strength and the wisdom to do what I needed to do to survive in even stupid little times like that. I can't say for sure that someone was going to come in. It could have just been the paranoia getting the best of me. There's no doubt about that. However, something was off. But it also reminded me of my childhood. I remember many times not feeling, I would say at least from the age of 5, 5 to 8, somewhere in there, feeling that I remember going to bed one night and realizing, telling myself, your your parents aren't going to keep you safe. Nobody can keep you safe. You have to protect yourself. I knew that at a very young age. I had also taken on so many responsibilities. By the time I was 12, it was very evident because between the ages of 12 to 14, just to give you a little insight, um, and where I had to be the protector, my father was an over the road truck driver, so he was very seldom home. What I did not know at the time, I mean, I found out years later because while my father was on the road, he had to go to a center he had a nervous breakdown. And he was taking drugs to stay up all night, so he could drive, kept separate logs. And, so he would sometimes be going, nonstop with no sleep for endless days. And I kind of get that with the trucker lifestyle. It's not healthy and it's not safe for the trucker or anybody else out there on the roads. I'll tell you that much. So please don't do it. I understand my father was trying to make all the money he needed to keep the home and support his family and stuff like that. But nothing we had was worth risking his life like that or somebody else's. So if you are a trucker and you hear this, please don't do that type of stuff. I know they have a lot of things now where electronic logs, I mean, you have a hard time cheating the system. It was a lot easier back then, and I watched my father do it constantly. He'd come home and he'd have all these logbooks out, and it was pretty smart. You have to be really smart to do that. But there was drugs, which I didn't realize till much later in life that that's what was going on in my home with my family. And here's where I can say there's either my mom was completely psychotic, which I guess is possible because right now I'd say she is, but that's I'm not pointing fingers. Um, there were moments though where I remember protecting my siblings. Being the oldest, we were all 4 years apart, and I was probably between 12 to 14. So my sister would have been maybe around 10, and my brother around 6, somewhere in there. They were much littler than I was. And my mother, all of a sudden one night, we're sitting there watching TV, and she's back in her bedroom, and she comes out and she goes, "Kids, get in the room, hide, hide." We're like, "What is going on?" And so my brother and sister are hiding, beneath and kind of beside my mom's bed because we're in her room. And she's staring out the window, and there's this vehicle down by, there was a bridge down the road from her home. And there's this vehicle with its lights on. And there's someone there. They're watching us. They're watching us. And I'm just like, so I look out the window. And I'm like, yeah, there's a car there. It did seem kind of odd. I don't know why the vehicle was there. And it sat there for a really long time. Then it turned its lights off. And I mean, there was some weird activity before, and within like a half an hour, the vehicle did leave and it just drove past our home, never stopped or anything. I don't know why it was there, but it could have been teenagers making out. I don't know. I mean, anything, but it also could have been a drug dealer looking for their money or something too, because I don't know what my parents were all into. I mean, now I know that that definitely could be a possibility with the things that I know now could have been happening then. Um, so I do think that that's possible. However, um, I remember my mom digging out my dad's 44, and she's got it in her hands and she's loading it, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, we've got guns, we've got vehicles on the road, like, we're three little kids. And I'm like, okay, so I'm telling my brother and sister, you guys hide. My mom's like, she freaks out. She goes, you stay here, you watch the window. She goes, I'm gonna go out in the kitchen. She goes, I'll make a phone call. So she's going to make this phone call. I think she's going to call the police, which is really odd because we had a phone right there in the room, in her bedroom. Why she didn't make the call right there? No, she had to go in another room to make this phone call. Then she hands me the gun. So here I am with this loaded 44, and I'm just a kid. At that point, I hadn't shot a gun yet. A couple of years later, I did. But I mean, I did not know what that gun could do or even really how to operate it, whether the safety was on or not. I couldn't tell you. So here I am, waving around this gun like a kid, not clueless, watching this vehicle, which if someone's gonna like shoot us or whatever, I guess I'm the one that's going. So, but my big thing was brother and sister are panicking, and I'm like, don't be afraid, it's okay, I will protect you, everything's gonna be fine. Not my mom trying to, be like, you guys, it's gonna be okay. No, she's freaking out, like having some massive paranoia attack. Um, and I don't even know what the situation was about. That was one. And then when the vehicle drove away, everything was fine. She put the gun away. We went back to life as normal. Um, Another situation, I remember we lived about 20-minute drive away from one of the biggest cities. So we were in that city to do some shopping, and we were on our way home. Halfway home, my mom's driving, and she's like, they're following us, they're following us. That vehicle behind us is following us. I'm just like, well, yeah, there's no other roads to turn on. Where are they going to go? And I was probably 14 to 16 at this point, and she's freaking out driving the car, and my brother and sister are starting to freak out, and I'm like, oh, you guys calm down, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. And mom goes, we're we gotta go, we gotta stop somewhere. And she just pulls in this random driveway. We're almost home, but she pulls in these people's driveway, and she goes, get out, get out. So we all get out of the car. Well, this vehicle behind us does not pull in. We get out, we go up to the stranger's house, and it just happened to be, luckily, a girl I went to school with who was in my grade. It was her house. And so when we went in, my mom's freaking out talking to this guy, and he's like, he looks at us and he goes to his daughter, he says, why don't you take them in the other room to play? And so we go with her, and he realizes that me and his daughter know each other. We go, and me and her are talking. My brother and sister are playing and stuff. And I don't know, about half an hour passes, and then we leave. Um, again, my mom would have these attacks, and it was constantly me making sure my brothers and sisters are okay, that they don't have to worry about this. I know when I was older and a couple of things happened where I was out of the home for a few periods of time, there was nobody there to protect them. They got very angry with me. Very, very angry. I mean, one of the things you have to realize is I was the adult to them. I was like the mother because my mom would work jobs, sometimes evening jobs. My dad wasn't there, so I would have to take care of them all night long. There was no adults in the home. Then my mom, would be gone. It was always me making the meals and getting them in their bath and their showers and getting them dressed and getting them to school and making sure they're doing their homework. I mean, I was the mother from a very young age to my siblings. Also, when there was times of abuse in the home, I was the one who stood up and took the abuse. And they were oftentimes protected. When I wasn't there, my sister learned what it was like to be the first, take on all the responsibilities. And she didn't enjoy it very much. I remember a time getting a phone call saying that I needed to talk to my sister because she was throwing knives at my mother. So she fought back. She would throw chairs. She would throw knives. No, my mom wasn't getting away with the abuse that she put on me with my sister. And I don't know why. I mean, I'm pretty headstrong and warrior kind of personality, but I know that there was a lot of submissiveness, when I was a child and a teenager, um, for respect to a certain degree. And then once I hit like that um, 16, 17 age, that's when I started vocalizing and speaking out. And then, of course, I was this horrible, rotten person because I was no longer submissive to their ways. But they call it teenage rebellion, which it possibly is, but there was a lot more to it than just typical, teenage stuff. And you'll see in some of my future videos um, some of what I've been through. For example, when I tried to commit suicide at 17, that a lot was what was happening in the home and the family unit and being bullied and all kinds of other things. But I'm not going to get into all the details in this video. That's going to be a very interesting one to get a lot of deep details of my life. But anyway, I ended up realizing that I was never protected by anybody, not my parents, not my siblings, not my husband's. I always was able to protect myself. But ultimately, I never really could. Where I realized that I was not protecting myself, where I was always protected, but it wasn't me doing the protecting that I thought all that time, was when I did move out of the domestic abuse shelter into my apartment. And I couldn't sleep for weeks. I mean, and they were breaking into my apartment. They were taunting me. They were harassing me. Nothing could ever fully be proved because I didn't steal anything. They didn't, I didn't have the security cameras that I have now. Nothing like that. I had recording devices out. You could hear them talking and stuff. And when I tried to play it for the police, they're like, well, you can't prove anything. You could have changed the time on that. You could have, there's 100 different ways why it couldn't be used as evidence by itself. Okay, when I first moved here, but then I got security cameras and all that, and a lot of stuff did stop. The harassment started stopping when they realized that they could get caught much easier. But the torment I went through, I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't sleeping at all. When I had my come to Jesus moment, if you watch my testimony video, you'll realize when that was. It was the moment right after that. I remember that night after repenting and being born again, having my born again moment, which was Jesus was right there. And I could feel him. And there was like they say in the Bible, or you'll hear people say, a peace without understanding. Like you don't know where it comes from. You just feel it, this total peace. Like there's no war. There's nothing wrong. Money's not an issue. Shelter's not an issue. Food, clothing. No, I mean, like you have no concern or care or worry or anxiety in the world. It is just complete peace. No drugs, no alcohol, no nothing. You just feel this through your entire body. This peace. There's no understanding to it because nothing's really changed. But I felt that peace. And I remember after doing all my repenting, getting up and laying in bed and just saying, I'm going to sleep. And I slept. And every night after that, I slept. There was never another night or a moment where I shut my eyes and I worried about death again. Before it was always, will I wake up? Death was a big concern. For the first time ever, I didn't fear death. And I still go through every day being like, not afraid of it. I am not afraid of dying anymore. Not how, not when, not why. There was a peace that came through me that really let me know that when I do pass from this earth, that is when happiness starts. Almost kind of makes you want it to happen sooner. Kind of like, well, why did I get saved then from my ex? Well, I wasn't born again yet. That had to happen. So God was always protecting me, knowing, because don't ever think God doesn't know. God knows what's going to happen. He knew when I was going to come to that moment. He knew what had to happen for that moment to happen. And he knew I couldn't die at that moment but he also knew what everyone else was going to do too. So it was easy for him to protect me at all times. And there's about a dozen different times I should have been dead, between car accidents. It's like, I don't even understand how I survived with barely a scratch in most cases. But it was always God protecting me. And those nights when I thought no one was protecting me, even as a little girl, he was. I wasn't born again. I wasn't a Christian. I wasn't any of those things. I was just a lost sheep. And even though I was a lost sheep around a bunch of wolves, he wouldn't let those pack of wolves attack me. Not in a way where it would cause death. He kept me safe constantly and kept me going on my path, no matter how many wolves were following me or preying on me. And once I had that moment where I realized the life to come after death here is going to be so much more rewarding than anything we've had on earth. And it really made me realize, and actually sad, for those who will not be in that world because they weren't born again. They didn't come to Christ. They didn't accept Christ as their Savior. That what those people experience here on earth, the happiness along with the sadness, is the best they will ever know. The best I will ever know is yet to come. And I have so much to look forward to. Everything we go through here on earth, all the torment and the pain, builds us more treasure in heaven. So in a way, when we go through that suffering, my next world is going to be there's going to be a lot of treasure because I suffered a lot. So there's more bad than good that I've been through in this life. So I'm like, my treasure is just amounting, it's payment in advance. And I wouldn't have that if Christ hadn't paid the price, the ransom that he had to pay to free my soul to be with him in that world. And there's never enough treasure that I could gain in heaven to pay him back for what he did. Because that peace that he made me feel that night, if I alone have that in the next world, and that's the only gift I get, that's all I need. It was beautiful. It still is. It never leaves you. I still have the worries of everyday concerns, of course, being here on earth. But like I said, there's that peace that I felt. I wish I could feel that every day, every moment of every day. Unfortunately, we're human and we tend to brush that aside as well. In that moment, I felt it, and I'll never forget how it feels. And I pray that that's one of the greatest treasures that I get in the next world. But don't be afraid of death. Death is nothing to fear as long as you know where you're going. Afterwards, there is an afterwards. There's ghosts and there's spirits and all this unknown stuff. There's an afterlife. Okay? Where you're going to spend that afterlife is up to what you do here on earth. But you're always protected. Whether you're with God or not, if you ask him to protect you, he will. He's that gracious and giving and wonderful to always be with us. There's 2 Bible phrases that I've chosen for this. One is Proverbs, and if you haven't searched or read Proverbs in the Bible, I recommend everybody do it. If you like riddles and things like that, Proverbs is full of them because it's all wisdom. These are all words of advice and wisdom, and you could read it forever and riddle it out and be like, oh wow, it's deep. Proverbs is very deep. So if you're a very intellectual person, I recommend to go read just Proverbs even. You'll find so much wisdom that you can use in everyday life just from that chapter of the Bible. And it's in the Old Testament. But from Proverbs chapter 3, verse 24, when you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. And that is smart. You know, when we do shut our eyes and go to sleep, if we're not afraid of death, we can sleep wonderfully. And if we're not afraid of tomorrow, that we trust God will provide, our sleep should be sweet because He will. He will provide. And then there's also Psalms. Psalms are a lot of songs, poetry, things like that. Vast majority King David wrote. He was a great musician. And the Psalms are just beautiful and peaceful too. And they're real personal, almost as if he was writing a journal of his life and his feelings. He puts his anger out there. He puts his sadness out there. So it's like reading a personal journal of King David, which is awesome too. So I recommend reading the Psalms. But this is Psalm 3, verse 5. It says, I lay down and slept. I awoke, for the Lord sustains me. Those are his words. He lay down and slept, and when he awoke, he realized, you have to realize King David was in a lot of wars, a lot of battles, and laying down in the middle of the woods, going, am I going to wake up? Was constant on his mind. So, but there I awoke, for the Lord sustains me. It was his faith in God that constantly pulled him through. And there's, some other things that I'll probably go through on King David in some later videos, because King David is huge to me in the Bible. He was a huge turning point in the Old Testament, which really kind of led us to Christ. But there's also things in the Old Testament that were really awesome that God said, constantly stating, I've got something greater to save you with. There is something greater coming. So you can clearly tell from the beginning of time, God knew Jesus was going to have to come at a certain point in time, and it was always the plan all along. Well, actually, from the conception of the world, God knew the whole plan. He knows everything. He knows whether you're going to be with him in the afterworld or not before you're even born. So I feel very blessed. Sometimes I say it's those that he's chosen, that he knows are going to be there in what they need to do on earth. Not that it's part of a game or a chess match like I used to think between him and the devil. It's about knowing that when he puts us here, we're here for a certain reason. There are certain things that are going to happen. There's certain things that we're going to do. God already knows how we're going to behave, how we're going to react. But he can still forgive us and he can love us, and we all have a purpose. So there is a purpose, every single one of us, to be here. And don't forget that, and don't lose sight of it. You may not know what your purpose is today, but just know you're always protected, even while you sleep. So sleep sound, sleep safe. I love you all. I've missed you, and I'm really glad to be back. Later.